Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Madeline.
I'm Julian.
And I'm Emilio. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together, talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we'd love to hear from you. And you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok, as long as that's still a thing, for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
In addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. While we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, forgoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we continue our current cycle of New York City films with a category we call Suggestion Box, where one or two of us elect a film for the group to discuss. At least one of us will be seeing this movie for the first time, and differing opinions may or may not be held among us.
And that film we are discussing tonight is the debut feature of director, writer, and actor Julio Torres, known from shows like Los Espookys and more recently Fantasmas. That film is Problemista, released last year, 2024. One of the more recent films that we've covered in this cycle and in general.
Definitely. And this was a film that originally was slotted to be released in 2023 and was pushed back because of the strikes. The film itself, I think the production was not affected by the strikes at all, but the strikes would have affected their ability to promote it. This film had its world premiere in 2023, but was not released in theaters until last year, as you said.
Yeah, and it was going to be released like right in the thick of Barbenheimer too.
Yeah.
But that I remember at the time thinking, like, after the whole Barbenheimer wave, it was not over, but after I had seen those two movies, that was the first thing I wanted to do afterward. And then it got pushed back, and I was sad about that.
Yeah, I was really sad about that as well. I was really looking forward to this. I know that you have started Los Espookys in preparation for this conversation. I watched all of it. I really enjoy Julio Torres' work and was so pumped for Problemista and was like so excited when that trailer initially dropped. We were kind of afraid, Dougie and I, that it was going to be a movie that maybe would just get pushed indefinitely and never come to theaters. So I'm really glad that it did eventually get a theatrical release.
Yes.
As you can tell, I don't have very much to say about the anticipation of this film because I'm the one of the group who had not seen this movie until, I don't know, about 48 hours ago, at least in full. So yes, you two have suggested this film to me.
This was Julian, your idea, but I think you and I are kind of coming in suggesting this together because I think you and I spoke after its initial release, like after you and I had both seen it, that we were both kind of like, I think Emilio should see this.
Yeah, no, I only had the idea because I knew we were both fans already.
Yeah.
And well, here we are talking about it.
That's true. I don't really get out to the theaters very much, so
it's difficult.
I'm glad you guys followed through on that and that I got a chance to see it.
For listeners, luckily, the movie Problemista is streaming on Max, so you can access it pretty easily now if you weren't able to see it in theaters when it was out around a year ago. We were saying a lot about this film, but before we get too deep into it, we do not want to confuse it with other films such as Problem Child, which is a movie from the 1990s, which I have never seen, but I've heard is a pretty notable film in the like black comedy, rambunctious child category.
Yeah, like that with like Dennis the Menace and maybe some of the Home Alone sequels.
Yeah.
I have seen the first Problem Child.
This is the same year as Home Alone. It's 1990.
Yep, that's true.
Big time for Dennis the Menace types.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't also confuse it with Problem Child 2, which came out literally the next year. And I have to say something. I've not seen Problem Child 2, but according to Wikipedia, they do something super weird, which is that they take the wife from the first film. She's played by the actress Amy Yasbeck, who would eventually become John Ritter's wife. John Ritter's the husband and the father in the film. But for the sequel, they cast her as a totally different woman.
Weird.
That Ritter's, like the dad character in the movie, actually becomes romantically involved with after he divorces
a different woman.
He divorces the character played by the actress who in the
character
sequel,
from the first movie.
Exactly, yes.
Who has been recast
exactly,
in the second movie.
Which is insane to me.
That's very confusing. They were like, we just really want her to be very central to this, and we have already locked in the divorce subplot.
Yes. I just found that to be absolutely nuts, and I think just on that alone, I might make time for Problem Child 2 at some point. Maybe it's on Tubi. I don't know.
That seems like the best way to watch a movie like that.
Problem Child 2B.
2B. Very, very good. And Problemista, although its main character's name is Alejandro, should not be confused with the Lady Gaga song, Alejandro.
I did think about that a little bit as I was watching Problemista.
Yeah, well,
that song is not even in this movie.
It's not.
You probably have enough times that he's called Ale throughout the film, for it to match the amount of times it's said in that song.
Exactly. Alejandro.
There we go.
Yeah. Not in a false cognate sense, but more in a thematic sense, this film is also not to be confused with the Kelly Reichardt film Showing Up, which is another movie about a visual artist or a group of visual artists released just 1 year before in 2023 and stars Michelle Williams as someone who, is unlike our protagonist in Problemista, not an immigrant, but is kind of, this more introverted personality, somewhat under the thumb of a more free-spirited landlord/artist played by Hong Chow.
Okay.
So there's definitely some thematic similarities and quite a similar milieu in that film, but tonally it's very different, and it is certainly not to be confused with Problemista.
Yeah,
that's good to go. Now, this film is in some ways about people who have given their bodies to science in hopes of a brighter future. For that reason, this is not to be confused with Three Body Problem, which is not just a physics problem posed by Newton, but also a Netflix TV series about China, the recent 20th century past, and aliens. I think there may be some supernatural-ish touches that they both undoubtedly share, but Three Body Problem is not Problemista.
And that's adapted from a book series, if I'm correct.
That's correct, yeah.
And speaking of cryogenics, I mean, I guess there is possibly an alternate universe or an unlikely shared universe where Alejandro appears in that episode of How to with John Wilson, where he interviews people about cryogenics.
Yeah. I really need to go back to that show because, it's a kind of a blessing that show is, it's not very many episodes, but each one is so incredibly profound.
Mm-hmm.
So me being the one who had not seen this film before, I went in knowing almost nothing about this movie. I didn't really look up too much. I didn't really read anything about it. I knew briefly that it involved characters that were weaving in and out of the art world in New York City. But yeah, I came in about as cold, maybe not as cold as Hester Street, but I would say maybe a notch below. This was an interesting movie. I liked a lot about it. I have some reservations, which we'll get to in a bit. But yeah, what is this movie about?
So Problemista follows the journey of, as Madeline already pointed out, Alejandro, or Ale Martinez, a young toy designer raised by a single mother in El Salvador who has moved to New York City with the dream of working for Hasbro. When his initial application to the company's talent incubator program is rejected, Ale tries to make ends meet with a job at Freeze Corp, a cryogenic freezing company, and is assigned to look after the frozen body of an artist named Bobby Asensio, who decided to freeze himself after a terminal cancer diagnosis. After accidentally unplugging Bobby's cryo chamber for a few moments, Ale is fired from Freeze Corp, but not without first encountering Bobby's wife, Elizabeth, a high-strung art critic who is generally scattered and self-absorbed, but occasionally finds some generosity in her heart. Out of a job, Ale must find a new sponsor within 30 days to avoid being deported, and as Elizabeth seeks to create a retrospective of her frozen husband's egg-themed works of art, Ale realizes that she might just be able to give him the sponsorship he needs. But before this possibility is confirmed, Ale must subsist on haphazard jobs procured from the ether that is Craigslist, as traditional jobs cannot pay him without a work visa, which itself is extremely expensive. In the story that ensues, Alejandro experiences the oddities of inconsistent employment, fighting to be Elizabeth's assistant against a highly privileged, albeit very attractive, competitor, subletting his bedroom in a Bushwick apartment, and the unforgiving realities of being an immigrant in the modern era with an abundance of surreal touches along the way.
That
Very
sounds
nice.
about right.
I think that's about as succinct as you can be with this movie.
There's certainly more things in the plot that I want to point out, but they're better saved for further in our discussion.
Yeah.
So we've already said a little bit about who here has seen it and what we thought of it. But I generally thought that this was like a really inspired take on a New York City movie. And, in this present moment, it's not like New York City movies are out of the mainstream. In fact, there's one movie that's very much in the mainstream right now, having just won a big haul of Oscars. That would, of course, be Anora. But I feel like that movie, it's getting its due praise as a movie that portrays New York City. And Problemista, I think, is an equally compelling take, albeit a very different one.
Yeah.
That isn't quite... I mean, I think, amongst people who have seen it like us, we can give it that marker of status. But more popularly, I think it still deserves kind of a boost.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we were talking already, as you said, about our experiences with this movie. I just want to say that I saw Julio Torres do stand-up in 2018. So before this movie came out, before Los Espookys, I guess he was working on SNL at the time. Dougie and I went to Butterboy. And he was one of, I think, 5 or 6 comedians of that night. And he just has this presence and this style of his comedy and his writing that is so unlike any other voice, I think, that's out there right now. And when he's kind of in the middle of like 5 or 6, more straightforward comedians, you just immediately get a sense of like, this person has something really special. And that's, I think, part of why I was so excited for this film, is to have seen him grow in popularity and in acclaim after seeing him now 7 years ago, just like doing stand-up. And he was already becoming well known at the time, but it's very cool to me to see how far he's come, I think.
Yeah, and when you compare some of his real life details with the content of Problemista, it is a very personal story.
Yeah.
And I mean, watching the movie, you can tell with how specific some things are. I didn't have the same background with Julio Torres. I mean, I'm a fan now, and I've been a fan ever since I first saw Problemista. But my experience was a little more conditioned by the movie itself, because I really found out about Julio Torres from learning about this movie. And I remember just seeing the trailer when it was originally supposed to come out in summer 2023.
Yeah.
And just based on that alone, knowing, I'm going to love this.
Yeah, I mean, even before this trailer, before this film even had a title, it was listed on IMDb as Untitled Julio Torres Project, starring Tilda Swinton. And Dougie and I were like, Untitled Julio Torres Project, starring Tilda Swinton. Like, what else could you ask for out of a movie? Yeah,
so, we all have varying degrees of familiarity with Julio Torres. I think it's worth saying, too, that as we get into the movie, the version of him that you see in this film is arguably toned down from his general presence out in the world. I haven't seen very much of Los Espookys, but the character that he plays on that is very vibrant, and you can tell from the get-go.
Yeah, and maybe like the polar opposite to Alejandro in a lot of ways.
Yeah, even just down to appearance level details. Julio Torres, I mean, he frequently has a dyed hair color. Yeah. His clothing choices are very exuberant too. And Alejandro has like a noticeably pretty unkempt hairstyle throughout the movie.
Yeah, he's always has a backpack on and a hoodie, whereas I forget the name of his character in Los Espookys. It's been a little while since I've watched it. But he's pretty much always dressed as more or less a chandelier, just in the sense of like these extremely extravagant outfits. Yeah. Somebody had asked him in an interview, like, is it difficult to star in and direct Problemista? And he said, well, it helps that Alejandro dresses so comfortably because it helped me be able to move around. Whereas if I was dressed like my character in Los Espookys, that would have been a lot more difficult.
I heard the same. Because
I'm more encumbered.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, looking at all the different things they had to film for the production of Problemista, I figured it was probably a pretty dense shoot, and to be comfortable as you do it is important.
Totally.
This is a movie that, has a lot of rapid edits. Clearly was filmed in a lot of different places between on location sets and soundstage sets. And I mean, that's actually something that sets it apart from a lot of other New York City movies and many of the ones that we are discussing as companions in this cycle. And, this is, the only one that really has an abundant sense of surrealism. There are all these scenes throughout Problemista where you see these kind of heightened interpretations or, just straight up depictions of things that are going on in Alejandro's life. And while these are unmistakably filmed on sound stages or constructed sets, they're also mixed with the unmistakable reality of New York City. And so what do we make of this film's combination of surrealism in realism, serving both Alejandro's arc and in portraying the setting of this story?
Yeah, I would say that the surrealism is, in some respects, a way for the film to put you in that very imaginative headspace that Alejandro's character is introduced to us as grown up, having his mother fostered that type of environment for him.
Yeah.
And her being an artist herself allowed that aspect of his personality to really take over. And so I kind of liked it because it was sort of this through line that we have with his character, that when we first meet him, he is a typical young boy with a wild imagination, but that some of that has stuck around.
Yeah.
And it's kind of informed not just his career choices, but also the way he just processes the world.
Yeah, totally. Julio Torres said, I don't remember if it was in the same interview, but he said in an interview that he had originally kind of considered making this a more grounded story, but that telling it more conventionally just didn't really appeal to him over time. He said that he was often told, like, oh, you should write something autobiographical, but that plenty of people think their lives are interesting enough to be a movie, and they're not always right.
I guess it's true.
And it wasn't until he decided to lean into kind of the magical realism that this story really opened up for him. I think that you can see how passionate he is about this material, but not just in that it's based on a lot of points of his life story, but also in that he's able to have fun with it. He's able to write the Craigslist kind of, creature around a real life friend of his. And I think that the sense of play that you get in the surrealism and the magical realism of this story just feels so true to him and is what's fun about watching the movie, I think.
Yeah.
And also very unique. If it was made or directed by anybody else, it wouldn't have these same touches, or most likely wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that you called it magical realism too. I think that's an even better term than surrealism. Just gets more to the specific sensibility.
And also Latin, I guess, a little bit of that there too.
Sure. Well, in what sense? I'm not sure.
Oh, just that I think there is some of that just filtered, I think, through his own upbringing. That magical realism is something that is, I think, really embraced in a lot of Latin American literature and art. So
Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah, that's the first name I thought of.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't think of that before.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No. Oh, no, we love it.
That makes a lot of sense. But and I've reading through various people's praises of the film, something that comes up a lot is that this is a story about an immigrant where there's struggle in it for sure, but where the character himself and his upbringing are really portrayed in a positive light.
Yeah.
And that, his home country is seen as a haven in a way.
Totally. I mean, whenever he's on the phone with his mother and you get kind of the split screen or it going back and forth between them, and you get him in this dingy apartment with not stains on the walls. I mean, I say dingy. I live in an apartment, not all that different. But my point is that you get the contrast of him on the dirty streets of New York. I say that lovingly, with her in this beautiful, green, imaginative. It's just, I found the contrast between those two whenever they're speaking to be so palpable.
Yeah. The home is carved out of nature.
Yeah, exactly.
At least from his homeland. Yeah.
It gives me that moment of being why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we want to remove ourselves from this beauty?
Yeah. And I think that there's a suggestion throughout the film that that Alejandro feels like he's been coddled by his mother and that he just wants to break free of that. He appreciates the upbringing that she has given him, but also needs to exert his own free will.
Right.
And I think, I picked it up on rewatch that in the great Isabella Rossellini narration that occurs throughout the film. She points out very early on that even though Alejandro seems burdened by, even before he meets Elizabeth, he seems burdened by his job working at Freeze Corp, that he is inspired by Bobby Asensio, the audacity of him freezing himself for posterity. And that inspiration, I think, is really his drive. And he often, in Julio Torres' performance, one of the details about it I really like, which speaks to some things we were talking about earlier, is that he often keeps a pretty flat affectation throughout the film, which someone, I feel like a less nuanced critic might say, like because he's not chewing the scenery, that might read to them as not a great performance. But I strongly disagree with that, because I think that this is true to the character for one thing, but also when you consider all of the different situations that he's in where he's struggling, but he has to present his best self, that keeping that really even-keeled presentation is such an important part of that.
Yeah. And he's very consistent. The performance is extremely consistent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even in moments where you think he might break out and chew some scenery, he really doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that is really interesting about his character. I mean, I was really drawn in by his journey.
Yeah.
Totally.
I feel like he becomes this really interesting reflection of all of these things that are happening to him because he is so flat, or because his performance is so flat.
That's a great way to put it. And it's certainly not the only film like that where, having someone so even keeled at the center of it really makes them the proper vessel for everything going on around them. But going back to the surrealism or magical realism of the film, I mean, my first thought when it comes to considering what it all means is going back to something that a recent guest of ours, Rob McClure, said, which is that sense of actually.
Yeah.
And that in a lot of moments, because, this whole story, it goes between being what is ostensibly the real and the unreal. And often it's these conversations, either that Alejandro's having with Elizabeth or with other characters that are portrayed in this heightened way. And the first moment we really get like that, I think, is Craigslist.
Yeah, of course. Definitely.
Featuring the great Larry Owens.
Yeah.
Who I saw in the audience when I saw the sign in Sidney Brustein's window.
Oh, cool.
Which Dougie reminded me of.
It's an interesting place to see him.
Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with his work. What is...
I mean, he's a comedian. I think that he and Julio Torres are friends and travel in pretty similar circles. I think he's done some guest work in like Search Party and Abbott Elementary, and I just really like him in this. I think he's very fun.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I thought he was one of the first big gut laughs that I had in this movie. Was just like, wow, they really went there. I was trying to find a way to describe what his character is. It's like a demented genie.
Oh yeah,
or an oracle or something.
It's like something super weird where you're like, he'll grant you the thing, but it won't really be the thing. And I very much appreciated that. As someone who spent a lot of time on Craigslist, IKEA Billy bookshelves, all that stuff. Some really, really nice specific touches there.
Totally. Julian, have you gotten far enough in Los Espookys to meet the kind of like water demon? You're only on episode 2, right? I don't think that's come up yet, but keep watching because, I mean, please go watch Los Espookys. If you enjoyed Problemista, watch Los Espookys. It's fantastic. And I think the Craigslist demon or genie is so I think directly akin to the water demon from Los Espookys.
Cool.
Is it Los Espookys, is that like on streaming somewhere?
It's on Max.
Oh, okay. So a lot of his stuff is on Max.
I think all of his stuff is on Max.
He's got a deal with HBO then.
Yeah.
Cool.
Los Espookys, Phantasmus, and also his comedy special, My Favorite Shapes, which I also watched in preparation for this. Again, so much that you can see so much of the same DNA between them. Most of the, spoiler alert, most of the shapes are more like toys in My Favorite Shapes.
Yeah, makes sense.
So highly recommend that special as well. And he references Tilda Swinton in it before they had met.
Wow.
Manifesting.
Yeah, but I have gotten far enough in Los Espookys to see in episode 2 there was one particular item that came up that is used as a very salient symbol in Problemista, which is the hourglass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that the hourglasses in Problemista are kind of in a mysterious vault.
Yeah, an undisclosed location of some kind.
with like men carrying them around, but you only see them from the neck down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it goes back to that sense of the actually that's going on here, because like the hourglass is just the it's meant to symbolize the time that Alejandro has left before he presumably gets deported.
Right.
So it symbolizes a scary thing, but a lot of the the harshest moments in Problemista are synthesized into some pretty big belly laughs.
Totally. And I think that's where a lot of this magical realism comes in, is as Isabella Rossellini's narration is kind of describing the bureaucracy and like the system that Ale's having to work through. I quickly wanted to point out also the one time we see an hourglass run out a couple of times, but the first time we see it happen, and the woman who is in the immigration office when he gets there, I believe her name was Mrs. Fuentes, she just disappears.
Yeah.
As soon as her hourglass runs out.
And there's a similar, not identical, but similar moment a little later on when Alejandro is taking this Craigslist job selling like a beauty kit on the street, and a woman he's trying to speak to just walks straight through him like he's a hologram.
Yeah. I love that, because I felt like it drew a really wonderful parallel between people in the gig economy and immigrants. Like they're both people that are struggling to keep their heads above water, and also taking the kind of work that more traditionally minded Americans would scoff at, but it's still very, very visible work, and sometimes very important work. So I love that. I thought that was a really great touch, and I clocked that as well. Yeah.
And even though I am not an immigrant, I can't relate directly to that aspect of the movie, but there are a lot of touches in it just about whether it's about like gig economy or aspects of job searching or even aspects of Bushwick living, frankly. I can deeply relate to this. I mean, the two things I think of in particular are, one, that rejection email that Alejandro receives from Hasbro very early in the movie.
Do not reply.
Yeah, which is just something I think we've all been sent one of those at one time or another.
It also includes something like, this rejection will remain on file, which is very foreboding.
Yeah, and the other thing that I can relate to, and this is something I really, really appreciate about this movie, is the size of the apartment that he lives in.
Actually realistic to Bushwick living.
Yes. And there's a scene later on in the movie where there is a steady cam shot, presumably, that takes Alejandro from the street into the interior, and it makes me think that wasn't a set, that was a real apartment.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. But it's, just even before, like when watching it the first time in the theater, before I even knew that it was the real thing and not a set, just the way, like, the ratio of, like, the coat rack on the wall to, like, where...
shoe rack.
The shoe rack, the, like, stuffed in a corner, the tables, and the size of the bedrooms, too. I just thought, like, oh, this movie is made by someone who has lived in Bushwick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I've lived in this apartment with this roommate situation almost exactly like if there was a third. Well, first of all, if there were 6 people living in this apartment. And second of all, if 2 of those people were like a couple, then that was me and Dougie when we first moved in. Like this kind of dynamic. The other roommate, who I believe is named Spike, the main roommate?
No, that's the actor, Spike Einbinder. Okay. Spray.
Reminded me in some ways of one of my original roommates when I first moved to New York. So I definitely understand this dynamic.
Yeah. Spray, who has pictures on, like self-portraits of themselves on the wall.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I'm remembering that now.
Not just on the wall, but on the living room, like the common area wall.
Like framed. And not like family photos, like gigantic, like full portraits.
Yeah. Going back to the one more aspect of the surreal touches of the film, that even as, there are all these moments that come cutting into real world scenes that seem to be like, they're not random, but they are kind of like frantic. They just like come right at you before you're ready. I did notice, and it's pretty noticeable in general, that there is a rather consistent symbolic set for a bunch of those surreal scenes, which is in a cave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like, I think the cave that his mother has a nightmare of when he's a child.
Yeah.
That she must protect him from going into this cave.
And there are red eyes in that cave that we find out belong to Elizabeth. And but then a lot of the conversations that he has with her throughout the film occur in this same cave. And even like that confrontation he has with the Bank of America rep happens in that cave
really
too.
Great moment. I stand with Bank of America.
Yeah, but that's a big theme throughout the movie too, of like coming up against these people like in low rungs on the hierarchy of their jobs who you get the sense don't want to be obfuscating things in the way that they have to because their job requires them to.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, whether it be the Bank of America rep or that Apple rep who Elizabeth berates over the phone earlier on in the movie.
Poor Apple rep.
I was going to say, he strikes me as somebody who was pretty helpful from the job.
He's trying his damnedest.
He really is. I would say the Freeze Corp lady goes into the bureaucratic red tape kind of speak a little bit, but
and also the waiter at the cafe who is, you get the sense like he's a more empathetic one of these employees too.
I would definitely say so.
But he like not threatens, but he suggests he might go out to get his supervisor.
And she says, "You're going to hold us hostage."
Yeah.
It's Elizabeth who's more in the wrong in that scene.
I'd say Elizabeth is in the wrong in most scenes where she has to interact with another person.
Yes. But most being the operative word though, because there are some moments where, as much of a problemista as she is, that there are sympathetic qualities that she has, and I do think that when the glimpses you get of her relationship with Bobby, she does seem like more of the underling in that dynamic too.
Yeah,
perhaps debatably.
Yes. Well, maybe we'll get into that. My feelings on that a little later.
Totally.
Yes. Yeah.
As we continue going through this, do we want to talk about a few possible comparisons that we see between Problemista and other films or TV shows or other related works?
I have a couple that jumped out to me.
Go for it.
I'll mention one right away, which is that the opening of this movie reminded me so much of Amelie.
I've never seen it, actually.
Oh, have you seen Amelie? Madeline?
I don't think I've seen it in full. My dad loves this movie.
So
I think I've seen parts of it.
Yeah, but they both start in this whimsical, very surreal way where you see the main characters as children and you see that there's something about them that happens when they're young where their parents become very overprotective.
Yeah.
And how their imagination becomes a driving force in their lives that carries over from childhood into adulthood. So to me, like watching this beginning of this movie, I was like just in big red flashing lights. I was like, Amelie had to have been an influence, I think, on this.
Cool.
Interesting.
Julian.
Well, something that I keep thinking of while watching Problemista, and this may seem like a little bit of a low-hanging comparison, but I can't not think of it, is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and I think that my primary basis for the comparison of these two movies, well, for one thing, they are both stories about, in some way, immigrant experience.
Totally.
In the more like down-to-earth aspects of both of them. But my primary basis for comparison is that I think they are both great examples of meta-modernism in film. And, it's, because this is like a concept that would come up in like a graduate level discourse. It's a little hard to describe meta-modernism succinctly, but I often, when I watch a movie, things that would strike me as meta-modern are like, well, for one thing, like rapid cuts between some very different scenes and kind of different timelines too.
Sure.
Which I think, both Everything Everywhere All at Once and Problemista show very clearly. A direct engagement with technology of the 21st century.
Right.
Sort of an all-knowingness that comes in the age of social media and the internet. And on the Wikipedia page for metamodernism, there's this really great statement in quotes that like the sensibility of it often can be described as a balance of ironic detachment with sincere engagement.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great description of Problemista, in fact, because, it's never not conscious of humor, but it also never loses its heart.
Right.
Yeah.
And that when you consider the shifting tones of the movie, I mean, there are a lot of these kind of like rapid fire, magical realist scenes where, like Elizabeth will be going on a rant and then suddenly like the score starts, there's a crescendo in the score and then you see an image of her in the cave with the red eyes.
Yeah.
Contrasted with scenes that have no score and are kind of moving at a snail's pace. Like when Alejandro is taking a Craigslist job that turns out to be a guy propositioning him as he under the auspices of cleaning his apartment.
I will say this ad was very upfront about what it wanted.
I would say so too.
Yeah, it's fair.
The word kink,
yes.
Yeah.
I think definitely lets you know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there was a guise.
Okay, yeah, not a guise. It was just upfront. Which, by the way, that scenario is also something that happens with a different kind of tone in the very first episode of Broad City. And the guy who I forget if it's a Craigslist ad in that episode, but the guy who wants his apartment cleaned is Fred Armisen.
Oh yeah,
not the real Fred, a character he's playing.
He strikes me as somebody who may very well in real life have a cleaning kink. Like, there's just something about that guy where I'm like, I could see that. And no shame, no judgment. I'm just saying.
Fred Armisen is in Los Espookys.
Yes, I think
there we go.
He's a co-creator of it, isn't he?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, with Julio Torres. But whereas
and Anna Fabresia, I believe.
Yes.
Can't leave her out.
Correct. But whereas in that pilot episode of Broad City, Abby and Ilana are taking that job to purchase tickets or to raise money to purchase tickets to see Lil Wayne, Alejandro is taking this job out of desperation.
Yeah.
This is right after he has had that pivotal scene where he goes to the ATM, which echoes another movie we discussed a few episodes ago, Francis Ha.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I was definitely thinking that.
Yeah. And realizes that he is severely overdrawn. And, this is just a job taken out of desperation to make ends meet.
I think that it was Tilda Swinton in an interview that I think was kind of speaking for both of them, saying that in the way that they present Elizabeth, like, they aren't trying to present her as an unequivocal villain. And that they were really inspired by how Hayao Miyazaki presents a lot of the villains in Ghibli films.
I heard this too, yeah.
In that they're not just evil. Like, they're complicated, and these quote unquote villains have backstories that have shaped them to the decisions that they're making and how they portray themselves to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I can absolutely see that. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of Miyazaki films are geared towards children, although I would argue they can all be enjoyed equally by adults. And this is obviously Problemista, not a children's movie, but I think there's this universality to wanting to bring empathy to characters, even when characters are doing like bad things or being mean to people. That doesn't necessarily mean they're fully bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, and this is fresh on your mind and on mine too, because we both just saw the 4K restoration of Princess Mononoke.
Yes, and I think that's a really good example.
It is, yeah.
In that the quote-unquote villains in that film aren't just presented as being fully evil. I have already, even though I've rewatched that only 5 days ago, have forgotten the name of the woman that runs
Lady Eboshi?
Yes,
Yeah.
Lady Eboshi. She has a redemption at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, it kind of mirrors what Elizabeth gets.
Totally.
There's two that jumped out to me. I think in the same interview where Tilda Swinton talks about the Studio Ghibli film villain recontextualization, she also characterized Elizabeth and Alejandro as like having some sort of like romance, not in a intimate kind of way, but just sort of like these two characters who realize that their
paths were meant to cross.
Their paths are meant to cross, and that there's something that they can give to one another. That reminded me a lot of Harold and Maude.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like there is a really similar turn that both movies take towards the very end that is meant to recontextualize a lot of what you see from one character earlier. And then the last one that I thought of, and this is the really weird one, and I don't think you guys have seen this, but Bad Santa.
I have not.
I have not seen it.
Okay, so this is another movie about a very unlikable older character at the center who takes a younger male under their wing in some respects and tries to teach them to stand up for themselves. And it is very questionable as to how good or sympathetic the messenger for this message truly is.
Yeah. And one more tangential thing that I'll mention briefly in the realm of comparison is that we already discussed those moments in Problemista where characters are treated like holograms. And, there's that woman who's that woman at the immigration office whose appeal is denied and who just fades. And that for those moments like that, I felt like there was a narrative logic in Problemista that almost made me think of video games.
Yeah.
And the only other, I mean, I'm sure you can find moments in Everything Everywhere All at Once that feel video game-like too, but another recent movie of a rather different sensibility, but that still has a significant element of video game logic that I had to think of is Hundreds of Beavers.
Yeah.
I've not seen this, but I've heard good things.
To.
Yeah. That is like, I think probably one of the most innovative movies of the last 10 years.
Definitely true.
Yeah.
If you like to laugh, if you like silent film, if you like either of those things, watch Hundreds of Beavers.
Yeah.
Very cool. I have love for both
Laughing
and silent film.
It's a movie you kind of have to be patient with, but if like that patience pays off big time.
Totally.
But yeah, so that's another movie without getting too into detail that really, it is both in like conspicuously in dialogue with films from around 100 years ago and also something that based on certain details could only have been made in the present.
For sure. And this has been Comparison Corner.
There we go. I guess we can call it that. Yeah, it sounds good.
So we already started talking a little bit about all the various minor characters in this film and how they affect Alejandro and Elizabeth and kind of the main story arc. He encounters a lot of people that to varying degrees have control over his fate. We mentioned Freeze Core ladies. There's multiple.
That's right.
Obviously, we have Elizabeth, but there are many more. So how do different characters in Problemista respond to Alejandro's situation and the power that they hold over him?
That's a good question. There are a couple notably villainous ones. They mostly seem tied to like corporations or something.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of the characters that seem to have power over him are not outwardly antagonistic. They're a little more subversively antagonistic.
Yeah.
So like I was thinking about Bingham.
Yeah.
I think, so Bingham
Bingham.
He's like the Nepo baby
Yeah.
that threatens Alejandro's standing, I guess, with her.
Mm-hmm.
But he never outright is like, I'm coming for your shit, dude.
Because he doesn't need it.
Exactly.
He's there because he has to be.
Right. The other one that I thought of that was really weirdly subversive. We were talking about the moment where he's flyering for the salon.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not even flyering. He's basically just trying to speak to people and engage them on the street by asking, can I ask you a question about your hair? He says he's been at it for 10 hours and nothing really comes of it. And he goes to like the person who's there who is overseeing, when he confronts him about the fact that he hasn't really had much success. This guy is like, what do you mean you haven't had any success? It's like, you just have to do this.
Yeah.
And he gets up and you don't really see the interaction continue, but it's intimated that just by being like a different energy.
Yeah, by approaching it with more confidence.
That he is able to close the deal. And I thought that was something that was quietly really profound.
Yeah.
Which is that sometimes it's not even the people that you would expect to be antagonistic. Like this guy is just doing what he thinks he needs to do in order to do this.
Yeah.
And he's just better at it.
He is. He's also a bad supervisor.
He definitely is.
Because he's been sitting there, and because it's not even only that he's better at it, but when Ale comes to him and is like, I haven't sold any, but also when am I going to get paid? And the guy's like, you're not getting paid because you didn't sell anything. And he's basically tells Ale, he's like, you're bad at this. You're too soft-spoken. Like you're not taking charge. You're not confident. But the guy's been sitting there presumably for 10 hours watching Ale flounder and knowing that it's not helping the salon business and that Ollie's not going to make any money. So I'm like, well, what purpose are you serving here?
It's interesting. I didn't necessarily interpret it that way, but I could see that. I kind of felt like it was just, he like showed up to see how he was doing. But yeah, no, I'm with you.
Even if he was just showing up like that day in the last 20 minutes, he's still sitting there scrolling on his phone, but also watching Ale knowing that he's not doing well because he has this like immediate criticism.
Right. Well, and I feel like that plays into, I think, the kind of antagonistic nature of this.
Yeah, totally.
It's the Bingham thing. He doesn't have to be the one out there doing it.
Yeah.
And it's the desperation that Alejandro's character is working under. He feels like he's unable to bring a certain level of confidence to get some things over the hump.
Yeah.
Though notably, as the movie goes along, Alejandro makes progress in terms of his confidence.
Definitely.
And that, that's another thing that made me think a lot of Frances Ha, that, you see her audacity grow as the movie progresses too. And that, it gets to the point where for most of Alejandro's conversations with Elizabeth throughout the film, that he's kind of on the receiving end of her wishes and just her view of things in general.
Yeah.
But towards the end, he becomes more assertive in that when he gets the call that this show that they have been trying to put together, 13 Eggs, because all of Bobby Asensio's art depicts eggs, that it's actually been accepted at this Roosevelt Island gallery, that he's the one to break the news. And also Elizabeth protests, like she's not happy about it, but at the end of the conversation, they both have this moment of like, okay, we need to get to work.
Because, as you said, he grows in confidence and he stands up to her. This is the first time that he actually asserts himself to her.
Yes.
And I think she respects that to a certain extent.
To a certain extent.
I don't think she would respect that from most people, but I think she has grown to like Alejandro. And I think that's why she's receptive to him standing up for himself, because she has seen that he normally doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
So she sees his growth. While we're talking about the eggs, I just want to point out something I forgot to bring up earlier. I saw this on Easter last year.
Hey, very nice.
Good Easter movie. And Easter, when are we releasing this? Is Easter past already?
No, it'll be out, I think, about a week before Easter.
Cool.
Maybe
So
10 days before.
next week, if you haven't watched this movie yet, on Easter, it's a great Easter watch.
Yeah,
so. That's good.
This is a movie full of great, as film nerds would put it, Easter eggs in its own right.
That's true. Yeah.
But Emilio, you were talking about, and I totally agree with you, how a lot of the people that have some amount of power over Alejandro aren't necessarily inherently villainous, and I think don't even always recognize the power that they hold.
Totally.
And I think that Mr. Salon Packages is a good example of this.
Yeah.
I want to talk about somebody that has, I don't know that power is the right word, but maybe it is, but that uses it for good is Khalil.
Yes.
Yeah.
The immigration
I pointed
attorney.
that out too.
I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about him too.
Yeah, let's bring him up.
Yeah. I mean, the reason, like the thing that put him in my mind is I'm just scanning over my notes, preparing to talk about this, is that the one quote of his that I wrote down was, in the first conversation that he has with Alejandro, he said, like, one of them says, "We'll see." And then he's like, "We'll see. That's a better slogan for us."
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a nice touch.
Which is, that's a really, it's a dark joke to make, but it is, for better or worse, it is a moment of honesty.
Yeah.
Sure.
Coming from him.
Yeah.
Because he knows that, like, he's doing the best he can in this broken system.
Yeah.
But he knows that he doesn't really fully have control over what happens to his clients.
Totally.
Right.
I wrote for myself that he has sorry, I don't make the rules, but I'm not going to add insult to injury here kind of energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then in the last conversation that he and Ale have in the film, this is also kind of before, or it's literally right before Ale has shown how much he can break out of his shell, that Mr. Khalil is, out of the goodness of his own heart, offering him a paralegal job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't think that Ale takes this job, but I do think that Khalil should get a paralegal that speaks Spanish.
I would agree.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great idea, because Alejandro has that moment where he finds himself translating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It does seem a little short-sighted.
Yeah.
I would say for their office, but I think for narrative purposes, it plays out really nicely that because he's able to translate for him, it gives him incentive to offer it.
I do want to briefly talk about somebody we already mentioned who I do think is maybe the most callous in these various situations is the Freeze Corps boss, whose name is Sharon. And the thing that I wanted to bring up is not just that she fires Ale for what I would say is a stupid reason, but whatever. My issue is that as she's firing him, she deflects responsibility.
Definitely.
And she reverts to using we statements, like we Freeze Corps. Like, and Ale saying, like, you realize that you're my sponsor. Like, you realize what this means for my immigration status. And she just switches to, yes, we understand. Like, we know. And he's like, who's we? Like, the fact that she has made this decision, whether or not it's fully in her hands, I think is not fully even relevant to this interaction. But the fact that she is so far from treating him like a person.
Yes.
That she's removed her own personhood.
Yeah.
And she's just like corporate boss lady, corporate middle manager.
Yeah.
I'm unsure how far up the food chain she is, because she is in like their ads.
Like spokesperson for them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how much power she has, but it really pissed me off when she reverted to the we statements.
Yeah. And well, you know, like later in that same scene, Elizabeth has a great moment of berating her where she just goes, "You middle of the road, middle manager."
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, that is one moment where, for all of Elizabeth's faults, she is, I think you do sympathize with her there.
Yeah.
In that little moment.
I would say that you get a feeling that Freeze Corp is kind of up to no good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that she's really giving it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but speaking of Freeze Corp, that there's, you know, one other character who maybe more indirectly than some of these others we've talked about, but I still think has power over Alejandro, who is Bobby, the artist. And, you know, even though he is frozen for most of this movie, that there are so many flashback clips of him and Elizabeth during the prime of their relationship that, you know, it's like, it's unclear whether these are Alejandro's imaginations of conversations, or if this is just the objective reality and it's the hand of the film inserting them into the narrative that we see.
I read it as flashbacks.
Yeah. I lean more in that direction, though. There are some moments where I think that, you know, it's possible you can interpret it as Alejandro's imagination of the conversations because of where they, you know, they like pop up during moments when you see him being pensive. But I do think that, you know, because like he's kind of the reason why Alejandro's gotten into all of this. But he is just an, you know, for lack of better term, he's kind of just an object throughout the film. That, you know, it is, you know, this monolith, like this 2001 A Space Odyssey monolith.
Yeah.
That
it's like a water heater in the corner of the room.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Giving purpose to what Alejandro is doing, and yet he never speaks with him face to face. And, you know, this, you know, he also is a significant presence, of course, in Elizabeth's narrative. And that, you know, she, like, her drive throughout the film is to create this show that is, even though he's not officially dead, commemorating him. So indirectly, Bobby has a great deal of sway over this whole story.
Totally.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, we're talking about Bobby, and if we talk about Bobby, we really can't not talk about Elizabeth. Tilda Swinton, her performance is pretty tour de force, kind of worth the price of admission. My hat is off to her. Just, it's such a jittery type of thing, and she totally nails it. And I like that the movie positions her as like this bizarro agent of change for Alejandro. So in like, I don't know, the final 15, 20 minutes or so of this movie, there is this reveal of her having like a more altruistic final note than I think maybe the first 3/4 of the movie would suggest. And I'm curious, how did that final note land for you guys? And I'm wondering if it effectively changed your opinion on her character in any way, or if there was even a change of opinion that came from that at all.
I think that throughout most of the film, up until these last 15, 20 minutes that you're referring to, you get the sense that Elizabeth is at best indifferent about the hand that she plays in Alejandro's fate, and that she potentially at times could be stringing him along by agreeing to possibly become his sponsor. Yeah. She uses that piece as both a carrot and a stick at different points throughout the film. And this alone is enough to make someone kind of hate her without even touching what a nightmare she is to everybody else that she interacts with. But this revelation at the end shows that she genuinely was paying attention in a way that I don't know that you get the sense that she was up until the reveal. So I love the moment where she tells him the name of the Hasbro man.
Yeah.
And the reason this stuck out to me is because I didn't get a chance to go back and confirm this, but I think that it may be implied that she made this call before they even reconciled.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so, too.
Based on the timing, it like would have been several days before.
Right.
So,
or it would have had to have been.
It would have had to have been. So they didn't even have their show booked yet. So
yes, I agree.
And I think that that's really important, because it's one thing to be like, oh, well, he completed the job and he got Bobby a show and then we made up. And then I called Hasbro and yelled at some people and like helped him out and got the information that he needed. Instead, it's like she was seeing his struggle, I think, actively in their last few days together and knew she needed to do something about it.
Yeah.
I think is kind of how I read it, which I thought was very nice. And I think it was effective for me in changing my kind of reading of her.
Yeah. And I think those final notes matter a lot with Elizabeth, but I kind of detected that, even if it's not clear that it's completely altruistic side of her, I did sense that, that more outgoing, generous side of her earlier in the movie too. I mean, even from one of the first scenes, which is the cafe conversation that she has with Alejandro, which of course, as we've discussed earlier, is tempered by her being hostile to a waiter there. But that this is the moment where she proposes curating this show and having, the possibility of Alejandro being her paid assistant. That, she introduces this and he already, he's already looking to her for, if not as like a mentor, as a potential benefactor. And, this is a moment where he gets a confirmation of that. We also know in the story that Alejandro is not the first assistant that she has had.
Oh,
I'm trying to remember.
Greta.
That's the actress who plays her.
Celeste.
Celeste. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Greta Titleman is the actor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Also in Los Espookys.
Yeah, I have made it far enough to see her there. Celeste, who, we see one interaction between her and Elizabeth in the narrative that is contentious. And, where Elizabeth makes an accusation towards her that Celeste makes it pretty clear is bullshit. But, perhaps there's a sense that I don't know if, Elizabeth, has the wherewithal to think that she is repenting for the mistakes that she made with Celeste. But, maybe there is some sense to that, she did some wrong by her and that, she knows that she needs someone to help her out with her efforts, and that that she is maybe looking for someone who she finds more favorable in a subjective way, but still she is looking for a person that fills that role, and Alejandro serves that. So, and there, I guess there's a codependent side to her as well, but in that codependency there is some, I hesitate to call it generosity until the end of the film, but there's take and there's give.
Yeah, I think that's a generous reading of it. And I do think there are parts of that I agree with. I think I would agree with most of what you said, but I do think to a certain extent, Elizabeth is desperate.
Yeah.
And she also is kind of looking for someone that she can push around.
So I totally agree. I got to say this is, and maybe I'll flesh this out a little more. This was the first time director, filmmaker thing for me coming out a little bit. I heard in an interview that Julio Torres did with the Discourse podcast, which I don't know, maybe it sounds like you might have listened to as well. But he said this line that I thought was actually really telling, which is he said, quote, "I have a lot of love for the difficult and complicated people that inspire me. I have always had a hard time making work about things or people that I dislike, making work out of resentment." And so to me, it's very clear that he has a lot of love in some weird way for her. Like he develops this appreciation. I don't think he got me there to the place where I think he feels himself. Okay. I know that she has this turn, but again, that it felt kind of forced.
You felt like it was uncharacteristic.
I felt like it was a little uncharacteristic. And I know that there are like little moments earlier where she kind of calms down a little bit and she's sort of able to take things in. But I'm just saying this is a true compliment. Tilda Swinton absolutely killing it in this movie. Like she is magnetic. You cannot take her eyes off of her. But she is unbelievably unlikable.
That is definitely true.
In this movie, like to a point where the way that she lies continuously to people who she feels like she can have power over, to me is like just unbelievably off-putting. And so there was something about the ending that I can really appreciate, that was where Julio Torres like wanted this movie to go. I think it makes for a good narrative. I didn't personally feel like it got all the way there for me. That's just me.
That's fair enough. I think it worked for me personally, but I can see why you would push up against it a little bit. But I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too. And I think that, well, sometimes with characters who are as conspicuously complicated as Elizabeth is, I accept there being a little bit of an enigma to them too.
Yeah.
That like we see a lot, but I don't think we can know the entirety of the person. So maybe turns like the one that she has towards the end seem spontaneous, and even to the person on the receiving end in the story, they feel spontaneous. And there's kind of this sense of, well, I don't totally know where that come from, but I'd be a fool not to accept this. But I think that one other moment that gets maybe, I don't know if it gets more at her interiority, but is a crucial change in the relationship between her and Alejandro. It happens around the middle of the movie. And it's when she becomes a little more aware of Alejandro's dreams, when she is looking at some of his toy designs. And
which I'd say invasion of privacy, but it's still on brand for her.
Invasion of privacy, but she takes an interest in it, and she she sees that he has these goals of his own, and she tells him this line that I think is very consequential in the film, which is, you don't get anywhere in life if you wait for answers from an entity. Get a name and get a problem for it.
Which is exactly what he does.
Yes.
At the end. Well, she gets the name, but she gives it to him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, it's maybe, I don't know if it's, self-aware altruism, but I feel like there is something that I do feel is apt to say about how she perceives Alejandro in that moment is game recognized game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think the other thing is that she is more or less about to end her life at the end.
Yeah, because it's revealed that she has frozen herself.
Right.
And it seems like she's had this plan for a bit. She had to call Miss FreezeCore and get the cherry flavored freezing liquid or whatever. And so I think that, perhaps as people are preparing for their impending death, they look back at, some things they could have done differently and want to leave some amount of good in the world. And I think that she doesn't really care about the world at large, but she's like, well, this kid, this young man, because she doesn't have anybody.
Yeah.
So I think he's kind of the best she has to care about. She doesn't fully know if there's going to be a future. She's actually talked about how silly this was that Bobby did this.
Right.
So I think she's going into the unknown. She doesn't know what's on the other side. It's not that different from death for people who believe in an afterlife. That doesn't mean that they don't want to leave some amount of good when they leave this world.
Yeah, and in the narrative, because FreezeCore can't confirm that all of their...
They haven't figured out.
Yeah, they haven't figured out.
They've actively said they haven't figured it out.
So legally, what their process is considered euthanasia.
It's just tricky to me. It felt like a very tidy way for the movie to be like, she's sort of gifting him this newfound confidence and this ability to look at life and be like, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue there are other things maybe that she gifts him, but that's kind of where the movie sort of leaves you with. To me, it feels like it comes a little too out of the blue if we think about the ways in which she acts with other people. In that same interview on the Discourse podcast, she actively talks about how she felt like oftentimes she was going really overboard in her performance. And again, from my sensibility, it felt like her character was just too far in that direction for that final note to like really work for me.
I think that it just kind of shows that it kind of goes back to the Miyazaki thing in the sense that like we don't know that much about her. We see her pretty much exclusively interacting with Alejandro and interacting with people while he's there. And we see either in these flashbacks with Bobby or, as you said, Julian, potentially like, fantasies of Alejandro. I think there's a possibility that there's a lot of her that we don't know and that we don't see.
And something else I think about too that, to consider the world that she is a part of is that the art world in general is it's a fitting place for these big acts of philanthropy by wealthy donors. And, I'm sure that, some of those donors like in this movie and in the real world are people who are not, at their core, the most altruistic people. They're just doing it for the optics. And because they have the money to spend, and people benefit in real ways from that. Maybe it's good that people on the receiving end of those donations get them, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's coming from. It could, a donor could say it's coming from a heartfelt place. We can't really know.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah. I would be curious though, because Alejandro's character is receiving it like it's an altruistic thing.
Well,
and is that maybe part of the satire of the film?
I don't know whether or not it's satire. I think that maybe he wants to think the best of her. I think that Alejandro has a real sense of optimism. As much as he has kind of been beaten down by the world, he still like believes in his dreams. And I think he has such a unique view on the world, much to mirror Julio Torres's, I think, real life view on the world, that I think that he just wants to believe that this person that he came to care about also cared about him, even if she maybe didn't outwardly say or show that in her real life. I would also say that I think that this event of her calling up Hasbro and yelling at people until she gets the name seems kind of like she would think it was fun. Like, it seems to play to her strengths of yelling at customer service people over the phone.
Right.
So the Apple blocked her, like the Apple support, and she had no one else to yell at. And she was like, who can I yell at today?
Yeah. Uber also blocked her off the app.
Exactly. Like, I'll yell at the Hasbro people for Alejandro, and that'll be my customer service yelling of the day.
Fair enough.
Also, I mean, another point that I think I'm just remembering now that I think is also important to consider in looking at the relationship between these two characters is that even earlier on in the narrative, like Alejandro, even if he's doing it under pressure, he helps her out significantly. Like when we think about, this is a scene we haven't even talked about yet, but when Elizabeth realizes that she has to recover the painting from Dahlia.
This scene kind of like broke my heart.
Yeah. The character played by Greta Lee, that, we see Dahlia reading what is ostensibly this heartfelt confession and apology from Elizabeth. And, you get this great little magical realism scene of those two reconciling in this kind of void-like space.
And it's really beautiful, the way they just like hold each other and like hold eye contact. It's really something.
Yeah. And then there's
that felt very Everything Ever All at Once.
Yeah.
Yes. What's it? The Deirdre Beaudeirdre and Michelle Yeoh's character.
Totally.
Yeah. Evelyn. Yeah. But and then all of that is offset by this brief moment, a flashback at that point in the story, where you find out that it was Alejandro who wrote this confession and was printing it out. So it's like he helps her out, and that's a moment that I think felt like very true to the the reality of that dynamic.
I see that, but I also feel like, we mentioned before, I don't think it's lost on her how she's able to take advantage of him.
Yeah.
And that moment is like one of the really big ones, because not only does that happen, but the moment she leaves her house, she's immediately shit talking this woman. Mm-hmm. And then immediately is just like, I have to get in this car and you have to take this painting that I've been crying about, saying has to be there, but you're going to take it yourself on the subway.
Although she said she thought he was going to get a car, but yes.
Yeah. But to me, it's like, if I look at her or try to consider this altruistic move, it seems to like undercut some of the performance from before.
It's like the movie is just constantly again and again showing you how self-absorbed she is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, why in this moment? Like, it's awfully convenient for her to not be self-absorbed at the very end of her life.
Exactly. Yeah. And to me, it doesn't really quite earn it for me. And I'll leave it there.
But part of why, like, this character resonates for me personally is because she feels real, and I feel like I have known people like this.
I totally have. And I think any of us, as probably all three of us have, like if you work kind of a customer facing job where you deal with people that are going to potentially get really upset at you about something, like you've kind of been the waiter character, whether or not you've been an actual waiter.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, I've dealt with people like this, and that makes it really difficult to empathize with her.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
to some extent.
I worked, 8 years of
Yeah.
in the service industry and retail. And it's like, I've come across people like this, and this is like the most turned up version of it.
Yeah.
And it is insufferable.
One last thing that I just wanted to mention was even though this would have happened ostensibly after she made this phone call, the night that she drinks the liquid, the substance, they have like some really heartfelt scenes, and the one that continues to stick out to me, where she once again kind of says like how silly it is that Bobby did this, even though she herself is about to do it. She's like, I had to be the one that like stuck around. I had to be the one left behind to like clean up the mess and like make sure he got there safely. So then she also, in theory, needs somebody to clean up when she's gone.
Thank you. Yeah.
So is it altruistic, or, she needs him?
I think I absolutely see that as a perfectly good read on it.
At the very least, she needs him to clean up the databases.
Yes, that's very true.
They do not match.
We haven't even mentioned FileMakerPro yet in this conversation.
Yeah.
And I mean, going back to like having known people like her, I mean, it's even down to like little aspects of the performance outside of the profession that she's part of. Like I have met people of my parents' generation with a very similar aura to Elizabeth. And also, I say my parents' generation because like Tilda Swinton is about the age of my parents. But also that like I know people in my general age group who have worked for bosses that are something like Elizabeth in this film. And, it's, not that it's a good experience, but it happens. And that, I think that the people I know who have experiences with bosses like that would say too that they like that those bosses were erratic, unpredictable, and maybe on some level maybe unknowable.
Yeah.
In a way that resembles Elizabeth in this film.
Yeah.
And that's, another aspect, even if it's only tangential for me, that sort of confirmed to me all the way from the first viewing that Julio Torres is working from something very real here.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth lives in New York and part-time in Maine and part-time
in Asheville.
She is so Asheville coded. This woman, there are so many of this woman, many places, but especially in Asheville.
I haven't encountered too many of them, but you've had a longer experience getting to know people in Asheville. So I'll take your word for it.
There are also a lot of very wonderful people in Asheville. It's a great place.
Are there any notable details, any fun details that we want to shout out?
I was wondering if either of you had a favorite of the toys.
Oh, I definitely do.
The one that comes right to my mind right now is that little snake that pops out of the can
mine.
With the apology on it.
That's mine. I like that a lot.
Snake, I have the list on Wikipedia. That one is snake in a can who pops out with a sign that says, "I'm sorry I was trapped in this can and scaring you was the only way out."
Yeah, I like that. I love that his toys have this very... what did you say? Meta postmodern? Meta modern. It has a very meta modern feel where you're like, it's a toy, but it's not really about play. It's about like
Yeah,
like
in fact,
showing
he
some
says
truth.
that modern toys are too preoccupied with fun.
Exactly. Right. And that these toys have to somehow introduce certain realities to children.
Yeah. Like I liked the snake, but then there's also a toy truck whose tire slowly deflates, meant to teach the lesson that children must play on limited time.
There you go. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that makes it even more of a shame that this wasn't released as it was originally supposed to, so close to Barbie.
That's true, because you also get the Barbie with its fingers crossed behind its back.
Yeah, this would have been a very fitting movie to release at that time.
I also like that one a lot too.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's in the Wikipedia page, but did either of you catch the name of Alejandro's eventual brand of toys?
I did not.
My Little Problems.
Ha.
Yeah.
I do like that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that in My Favorite Shapes, you also get a lot of very fun toys. He talks about how he recently came to the zoo and he was like, I found the zoo lacking and I have some suggestions. And so I'd like to now read some of the actual models that were built for the My Favorite Shapes, which I think directly leads into the toys in this movie. You have swan with neck too long, so it has to drag on the ground. Flamingo that uses both legs. Porcupine who removed all of his quills to keep from harming his lover, but now he can't recognize himself when he looks at himself in the mirror.
Nice.
And a clam that lied in his job interview and said he was an oyster and got a little in over his head because he misrepresented himself. And then on the first day, his boss was like, okay, now I just need that pearl.
Can't offer it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. These are good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the creativity behind them is really fun.
But when it comes to little details, I want to point out a few examples referring to vintage technology. So, I mean, for one thing, there's a moment during the scene when Elizabeth berates the waiter when he's nervously clicking his pen and you hear a dial-up tone.
Okay.
Just to reflect, I think, the anxiety of the scene. But I thought that was a touch where, it reflects well of Julio Torres too, that he included that there because it's like, vintage, but we like people of a certain generation still know it. Other examples like that. So when you see Elizabeth at her main house, there's this really old school Mac computer that she turns on there.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
And by the tone of that that happens when she turns it on, that it's like, yet again, like if you grew up in the 2000s, that's so familiar.
Also the mouse. It's one of the circular mouses that it's like a translucent color.
Yes. Yeah. I clocked that too.
And another one that was just a few minutes after that scene was when Ale is going to a shop to get a CD printed and the sound of the CD burning. That's something like you don't hear that a lot in this day and age. It's still very possible, but just because so much is on the cloud. I feel like I know that sound well, but I feel like people who don't use CDs a lot don't. So I really appreciated that detail too.
Yeah.
Also that at the disc burning, you see that there's a runtime of 4 hours there.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
How about you, Emilio?
One scene that I just really loved, it was maybe to me felt like the most cinematic moment of this film were the shadow of the Roosevelt Island tram.
Oh, yeah.
I loved that. It was really cool. I also just love the Roosevelt Island tram.
Yeah.
I also love that Elizabeth has the power to turn it around.
That's true.
Yeah. And I recently watched another movie that features the Roosevelt Island tram, it's not Spider-Man. It is Daddy Longlegs, which is the debut co-directorial effort of the Safdies. I say co-directorial because Josh Safdie directed a movie, The Pleasure of Being Robbed, that came out 1 year before Daddy Longlegs. But there is, without saying when in the film it is, there is a notable scene in it that occurs on the Roosevelt Island cable cars too.
But Emilio, I agree with you. I really love that moment. And I like that you get kind of these aerial shots also. It reminded me kind of West Side Story.
Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just wanted to talk about what they refer to in interviews as the bureaucratic limbo, because I don't think we really talked about this, but the kind of maze-like office structure that's describing, as Isabella Rossellini's narration is describing the immigration process for him to get his visa. And so they have this set built where he's like crawling through ducts and going through ceiling tiles. And I just think that is the scene that has continued to play in my head for a year since I saw this movie originally. That's the scene I can't stop thinking about.
It's a very striking visual.
And it was in the original trailer too. And that I think was the scene that jumped out at me from that trailer. That was the moment when I knew I'm going to love this movie.
Yeah.
It feels like a practical set too, in a big way.
It
does,
seems
yeah.
like it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a few details about it that, would have to be digital when you just see or if not digital, at least, just
Digitally enhanced.
Digitally enhanced, where you
Yeah.
see Alejandro goes through a trap door with nothing below it and then comes out diagonally below that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a really impressive scene to watch. I mean, when I think about New York City movies in general, a lot of them are, so distinct because they're all on location. And I mean, when we look at movies we've previously discussed, Francis Ha, that's visibly all on location when you watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Hester Street sometimes is on location. It has,
It's on a location, not on Hester Street.
Well, yeah, on Morton Street in reality, but it has scenes that are clearly sets too, but still that are so much care is brought to them that they feel like the real thing. But also it's a period piece, so how could it really be exactly the same thing?
Yeah.
Whereas Problemista is, without spoiling the films that we're going to discuss in this cycle beyond this, definitely the most futuristic of the films we're discussing. And I like the interplay that it has between the unmistakable on location element of New York City and the unmistakable imagination that goes along with creating sets, building sets on sound stages too. And I think that bureaucratic limbo scene is maybe the best example in the whole movie of that.
Totally.
I just thought of one more that I really liked, which was that moment where he gets the subletter and he speaks into one of those, I don't know what it is. He speaks into it's like a tape recorder, but it's one that you might have if you were a 4-year-old.
Probably produced by Hasbro.
Maybe so. But I love that little detail where he speaks into it and then suddenly Travis, I guess the character, kind of pops out and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And then it cuts right away to him arriving at the apartment in actuality, and he goes, "Hey, what's up?" And he kind of says it the exact same way. It was a fun little laugh. I like that.
A few more things I want to very quickly point out. So we talked a little bit earlier about the hairstyling in this movie, and there's always this little tuft of hair that's poking out from Alejandro's head. And there's even one moment where you can see him kind of adjusting it in the movie. So I like how that was clearly something that Julio Torres and whoever the makeup artist was that styled him day to day was keeping track of.
I like a lot of those little things with Ale. I like how he almost always has a backpack on. I like his little walk.
I have to say, even though that scene with the cleaning kink was rather unsettling, the detail of him taking off the backpack kind of made me laugh a little bit.
Very funny.
Keeping it on until he's absolutely cannot.
And that guy has a Jules and Jim poster.
I noticed that too. Yeah.
Got that as well.
And did you guys notice that his apartment building, this guy's apartment building, has separate stairwells for up and down?
I did.
Oh,
I
wow.
did catch
I'm like,
that.
what is that? What does that mean?
Yeah. That scene in general is a little unsettling.
It's very unsettling, but in a way that I like.
Just because of a few particular exterior shots that are used in this movie, and also just the look of a lot of these buildings, I imagine a lot of it happening, when it's not specifically in Bushwick, to be in between North and South Williamsburg areas, and that kind of apartment, I would imagine being off the Graham Avenue L or something like that.
I would say so.
Also wanted to point out a great New York moment where you see a handbag caught between subway doors with a bunch of pill bottles rolling out of it.
Pharmaceuticals popping out.
Yeah, and that's one moment where, by Ale's look at it in the film, I don't think he even understands it either.
Right. I also love that scene has the score in this film is really cool. It's very avant-garde.
Yeah.
It kind of uses choir stabs
a
lot, and there's some really nice choices in terms of what is accompanying those falling pill bottles specifically.
It's a lot. I mean, I think in older times they would have called that in scoring Mickey Mousing, where the music matches the action. But that's another thing that actually made me think of Not Everything Everywhere All at Once, but Swiss Army Man, that has a score like that too.
Yeah.
Where it's, it is in pretty direct dialogue with the action on screen. But then the last little detail I'm going to point out, and it's actually technically two things that are connected in the film. Very early on in the prologue, you see Ale's mother, she's searching for him when he's gotten lost in the cave, and she kind of absentmindedly touches a tree with thorns on it and pricks her finger on a thorn. And then later
later in the film, I know this line. Yep.
Yeah, much later on in the conversation that Ale and Elizabeth have before it is revealed that she's decided to freeze herself, she says, "I'm the thorns that protect the rose."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Love that.
Reference to Bobby.
Yep.
Totally.
Yeah.
Speaking of like pricking yourself, this is slightly different, but in the kind of showdown between Ale and Elizabeth in the cave, which is imagined, they are not physically in the same place in reality.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say.
But he or she like scratches him, like cuts him.
Yep.
And he cuts his face.
But that persists.
That's what I was going to say is that sticks around through the rest of the film. When they're on the Roosevelt Island tram in particular, I was like, he still has that little mark on his face. And I thought that was a really interesting choice.
Yeah.
The last detail I wanted to point out was a bit of credit spotting. So at the very end of the credits,
Yes,
you get a little message that says, since the filming of this movie, Bank of America has changed its overdraft policy. It's now $10 up to 2 times a day. We were legally advised to tell you this.
Nice.
That is how the credits end.
Things like that are the reason why I watch credits to completion.
You have to.
Yeah. And like, I've had people, playfully,
rib you for that?
Yes,
Okay.
in the past, but always affectionately. But I do it because you find things like this. You never know, but you have to take it on faith. And this is one case where it pays off.
Totally.
Yeah. No, I would agree.
All right.
Are we ready to share some unlikely universes?
Yes.
I think so.
Cool. I could start.
Go for it.
Go for it.
So we only see Dahlia in a couple scenes, one in maybe a flashback, and then obviously the one where she's reading the apology letter from Elizabeth, quote unquote. But we don't know much about her other than the fact that she's an artist, and it seems like maybe she's not doing that well as an artist. Alejandro says she runs a daycare. She has a lot of children in this apartment where they go to. But I think it's possible that they don't know anything about Dahlia. She's just holding down the fort for a friend. This isn't actually her job. This isn't actually her life. She actually has big plans that very evening, and she heads down to her apartment after her friend comes home to take over the daycare or the children go home or whatever. She heads down to her apartment, which is oddly inside an old Jewish school, to set up a birthday bash for her best friend, Nadia. When her friend arrives at the party, she exclaims, "Sweet birthday, baby," and slips her a joint containing multiple illicit substances. And whether it's due to the drugs or otherworldly forces, after Nadia, her friend, is hit by a car later that night, she is instantly transported back to Dahlia's apartment without a scratch on her. Nadia assumes this must be the joint and continues about her night with an eerie sense of deja vu. But later, after attempting to rescue a street cat and falling into the river, Nadia dies again and is transported back to the apartment again. How many lives and deaths will Nadia have to endure? And how many times can Dahlia, or rather Maxine, exclaim, "Sweet birthday, baby"?
Russian doll.
Good. Nice
I haven't seen it, but I know the time loop element of it.
I was pretty sure that you hadn't seen it, but I thought maybe you would get it just from, basic Groundhog Day-esque details.
Is Nadia the Natasha Lyonne
Yes,
character?
Nadia is Natasha Lyonne. Greta Lee is her best friend who's throwing the birthday party that Nadia continually wakes up at every time she dies. So you get a lot of Greta Lee in that. And that's, I think, the first thing I ever saw Greta Lee in.
Nice.
And she's excellent in it.
Yeah.
Very cool. I've not heard of this show, so
now you have.
Yeah,
I have now.
I highly recommend. It's on Netflix. I think it's only 2 seasons. Yeah, really, really excellent.
Yeah.
Very cool. Can I piggyback off of our potential shared universes containing Dahlia? Okay, so we learned that she was an artist herself who it seems like was sabotaged by a terrible review that Elizabeth spitefully wrote about her work that she apparently didn't even see. I guess she's running a daycare now. I'll take that as fact, I guess, for now. I don't think that breaking into the art scene in New York City was necessarily always a drive for her. In fact, it seems like maybe that's something that she backed into. 5 years before the events that we see in Problemista, Dahlia was an acting student at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, and she became inspired by one of her professors to attempt some method acting, go out into the world and actually inhabit the persona of somebody entirely different. And that's when she stumbled upon an opening for a nail technician at a local salon. She gets hired off the books, and she goes by the name Vicky to her clients, but says that her Korean name is Hae-won. She has some fun with her clients, particularly a pair of local siblings there, and has a laugh, usually at their expense, by telling them that they mispronounce her name, no matter how accurately they may actually say it.
Is this television or film?
No, this is a movie.
I'm stumped.
I don't know this.
Okay, this is the movie Sisters.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that like a Tina Fey, Amy
Tina
Poehler?
Fey,
It is a
Amy Poehler.
Tina Fey, Amy Poehler film. Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to say that this was maybe her big break.
Okay.
Is that she has like a scene in this movie where she continuously corrects Amy Poehler for mispronouncing her name and then mispronounces her name in response.
Huh.
But she's kind of fun in it. I don't know. I could very well see that maybe something like that happened. And that's what brought her to New York City. But
Okay.
Very possible.
Other art, ended up becoming of interest.
All right. This is reminding me, I just haven't seen a lot with Greta Lee in general. Other than this, it's only Past Lives
Yeah.
and the voice part that she has in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which I didn't even pick up when I was watching the movie. So yeah, got to watch more things with her.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm going to share a scenario relating to a different character and one that we only see quite briefly in Problemista. When Alejandro returns to his apartment one night, he finds a party going on there, presumably being hosted by an acquaintance of his roommate Spray's named Lily, who's dating a fellow attendee and inadvertently breaks the news to Alejandro that Hasbro has plagiarized one of his toy designs. Now, this Lily is actually named Kayla, and she is the daughter of a wealthy head of a Los Angeles talent agency. In other words, she's a Nepo baby who's decided to take a vanity trip to New York during a week that she gave herself off. This relationship that she's gotten herself into is itself a frivolous thing that lasts no longer than the short time that Kayla, or Lily, is in New York, and she gives a pseudonym so as not to make any connections that are too deep. But after a short time, Kayla nonchalantly returns to her assistant job in which she struggles to keep things professional, but can seemingly experience no repercussions due to her father's status. But over time, she will make a serious effort to channel her talents into the representation system of a well-known Las Vegas comedian and her new upstart joke writer, who are experts in their fields, but often come across to lay people as merely hacks.
Hacks.
Yeah.
Cool.
Got it.
Which is another show that I was thinking a lot about that watching Problemista, because it's also like the central relationship of that has, one
older,
like
younger,
this like a similar age dynamics, but also the older person in that relationship has a mix of like narcissism and this kind of ambiguous altruism too, but also that the like immigrant experience isn't really an element of that story, but that the younger counterpart is more in the trying to get by position. Relevantly to that, Spike Einbinder, who plays Spray, is the sibling of one of those two co-stars, Hannah Einbinder.
Yeah.
And so there's a few threads of connection to hacks in Problemista.
Fun.
Yeah.
I've heard nice things about that show.
It's great. I've seen it. I've seen all that there is now. By the time we release this, a new season will have just begun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts about Problemista?
I loved it when I first saw it. I still do. I love watching movies that have, it's not scattered, but as many kind of like frantic details as this one has, and just really taking my time with them, like freezing the frame when some of these like brief insert shots happen to see what's going on, while still giving due deference to the momentum that a movie like this is supposed to have. And I think, going back to this whole theme of New York City movies, that it is a really original and vibrant take on, the effort to get by in this city that is both connected to a lot of other movies we're discussing and also very much in a league of its own. And I hope that there are more stories like it in years to come.
Totally. As I said, I've followed Julio Torres since 2018, and I am really excited to see where he goes after this, because this film I was, anticipating for a long time. And I think it really held up in the theater. I think it really held up to a rewatch because of exactly what you're saying, Julian. There are so many little details in this movie that are just so funny and so effective. And it's really easy to miss a lot of them. So I think this really holds up on a rewatch. So I can't wait to see what he does next. I still need to watch Phantasmus. So that'll be next on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I, in general, really like this movie. Thank you so much for suggesting it. I agree with you guys. I feel like this is a really dense movie. And it's funny, it doesn't necessarily track as a movie that has a ton of gags, but it kind of does.
Yeah.
There's a
quiet.
lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on. In general, I really liked the sensibility of the characters. I felt like it was a cool take on the desperation of being an immigrant. I liked the main character of Alejandro, and I kind of liked the message. Like, I know I spent a long time talking about how I didn't really like Elizabeth necessarily as the messenger, but I think the message I like a lot. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot to like about this movie. Maybe I'll watch it again next time and feel a little bit differently, or I'll see things I didn't see this time. But I'm really glad I saw it. It was quite cool. I would recommend it.
As would all of us.
Yeah, I recommend this movie. I recommend all Julio Torres work. You guys seen Wells for Boys?
No, I haven't heard of this.
No, neither way.
It's not a movie. It's an SNL sketch.
Okay.
Yeah, go watch Wells for Boys. Julio Torres wrote this.
Okay.
It's very much in this same kind of vein.
Okay.
All right. I am intrigued.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, should we say a little bit about what we're going to talk about next time?
Totally.
Yeah, sure. Well, our next episode is going to be our two-shot, and we will be sticking with a more current contemporary New York City vibe and setting for this next pair of movies. These are going to be two New York City-based films that feature desperate young protagonists traversing the city in a race against time in search of something that may or may not be giving them some closure for their predicaments. I think it's safe to call these films the breakout and breakthrough films, respectively, for their writer-directors. And that would be 2017's Good Time, that's directed by the Safdie brothers, starring Robert Pattinson, and Honora, which is the movie that was the Best Picture winner last year in 2024.
Among many other
month
things.
ago.
I know, that's right.
Yeah.
Written and directed by Sean Baker, starring Mikey Madison.
Yeah. And yeah, fresh off the momentum of that one. But even further back in our episode history, I mean, when we talked about Medium Cool, I was thinking then about who are some more recent filmmakers who have kind of taken a similar spirit in their filmmaking that Haskell Wexler did there. And immediately I thought of the Safdies and Sean Baker. And now here we are about 6 months later. We're going to do an episode where we talk about both of them.
Very nice. I'm excited. I really am.
Very
Totally.
much.
I've seen both of these already in the past. And yeah, it's going to be a great time.
I honestly, in covering New York City movies, I would have felt remiss not talking about these movies.
You were really gunning for this. You were like, these are non-negotiable.
Yeah. But it's, just with how current Honora is, but also just with the mark that the Safdies have made on New York City movies, throughout their filmography. It feels, in my opinion, inevitable.
Cool. Well, next time you listen to us, that's what we'll be doing. In addition to this podcast, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. We would love to hear from you. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. I am not on Letterboxd, but I know you guys are.
I am. You can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats.
And you can follow me, Julian, at Julian_Barthold. If you are listening to us for the first time, thank you for finding us. If this is the second or third or 50th time you've listened to us, thanks for sticking with us. We've really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
If you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, to please write a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and to help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots and tell a friend to tell a friend about the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
And now, why don't we go learn FileMakerPro and show some people how the databases match?
Let's do it.